What is the scariest thing that has happened to you while driving a vehicle? My wreck. St. Patrick's Day 2018. My then girlfriend and I were headed to a place to have dinner and hang out. We were just a couple of exits away when the traffic in our lane, the right, came to a stop, but the left lane was still going. We had been stopped for a couple of seconds, and the next thing I know, I'm looking at the hood of my car. Time went pretty slow. I remember thinking, this fucking idiot in front of us backed into me and popped my hood open. But then I started to fall backwards into my seat. Went from looking at the hood to the dash to the steering wheel very quickly. That's when I realized it wasn't the guy in front of us. It was someone behind us. There was a brief period of time where I never lost consciousness, but I don't really know what happened. I remembered to keep my hands away from the steering wheel, but that's it. The car stopped, and we were now in the left lane, my door facing oncoming traffic. All I could think was, here comes the second hit, here it comes, but it never did. Upon stopping, and my brain catching up, my girlfriend yelled, Jesus, and I yelled, fuck. I remember on the F, apparently I bit my lip when we got hit, so making that F sound, I sprayed blood all over my arm. I remember the feeling of little blood droplets as they landed. My girlfriend had already been in some bad accidents before. My first thought was, God, please don't let her be paralyzed. At the same time, I was doing a mental checklist of myself, wiggling toes and fingers and whatnot. Did I know where I was, who I was, etc.? My girlfriend took her phone out of her pocket and called 911. She didn't know the area well, so I had to tell them where the wreck had happened. I'd been in some minor fender benders before, but nothing like this. Inward shaking and stammering the whole time, just trying to get the info out. Both of us had some head, neck, and back pain, so we requested ambulances just to be safe. At one point, I remember looking in the mirror and seeing the car that hit us was a good ways behind us. My girlfriend also pointed out that the back windshield had been shattered. Upon looking in the mirror again, I could see it was in fact completely blown out, and there were little bits of glass on the area above the back seat. Emergency services arrived on scene, asked us about what happened, our injuries, all that. Cops, firefighters, paramedics, each. Firefighters were worried they'd have to backboard me, and something about machinery. Another fireman informed me that they were going to have to cut my doors off to get me out. At some point it took 2 firemen to pry my girlfriend's door off. The guys went to work on my door. At some point I noticed I was not sitting up like I usually was, but in fact was nearly laying down and kind of tilted to my right. What we found out a few days later, when we got to look at the car, was that both of our seats had been ripped from their tracks by the impact. The first ambulance came and got my girlfriend. She was able to get out of the car with the help of a fireman and able to walk to the gurney. We said goodbye and told each other we loved each other, and she was gone. The firemen were still working on cutting me out. Eventually I was able to get out on my own power and walk to the gurney myself, was loaded up, and we went to the hospital. We were both released within an hour. My parents picked us up. We found out later, when we had to get x-rays, physical therapy, that we both had curvatures in the spine as well as herniated discs. According to the EMT in my girlfriend's ambulance, it was a pretty bad wreck. He told her when they arrived on scene they expected us to be in much worse shape and was surprised we only had the injuries we did. They figured the person that hit us had to be going no less than 60 miles per hour. I have an album on Imgur if anyone would like to see pictures of my totaled car. Also, if anyone is looking for a safe car, I can say that the 2013 Dodge Avenger will take a beating, so you don't have to. When I used to work at Hooters, we were walked out to our vehicles at night. It always gave me a sense of security until one night, as I was pulling out of the parking lot, I noticed a black SUV pull out behind me. I didn't initially think anything of it. In fact, I didn't really even notice it was following me until I got to the freeway. I thought at first it was my friend Brandon, because he frequented the bar next door. He had the same or similar vehicle. I soon noticed he was heading towards my house, and then I knew it wasn't him because he lived in the opposite direction. I started speeding up and changing lanes to try to get as much distance between us. Every move I made, he stayed right on me. I started to freak out because it was super late and there weren't many cars out. I reached in my bag and grabbed my cell phone to call my boyfriend or 911 or someone when I dropped my stupid phone and it fell way down deep underneath my driver's seat. I was starting to get really scared because not only did I not know where the closest police station was located, but the freeway was under construction and it was narrowing way down to 2 lanes. The only thing I knew was to haul ass home and get within our gates. Did I mention it was late and I also lived off of a dark road? Whoever was in the SUV knew exactly where I was going and was hell-bent on getting to me. I was crying at this point and trying just to reach home when I swerved off the road at the last second and drove over some grass to get off the freeway. Didn't do me any good because he just followed me. I was so close to home when, by the God's grace, I saw a police officer and drove directly to him honking my horn. The SUV hauled ass past me, and when I turned to look, he was staring directly at me, punching his steering wheel. The cop must have been heading off to an emergency because he turned around and headed off in another direction. When I got home, I jumped out of my car and ran upstairs only to find out my boyfriend accidentally locked the top lock and I was locked out. I stood there crying and banging on the door till he answered it, super confused. So that's the time some psycho followed me from work, and I'm sure he had every intention on hurting me. Scariest shit ever to happen to me while driving. A few months ago, I was driving home from work. I like to go the back way to avoid the highway at rush hour. This means driving through areas that were once country roads before the city built up around them. No sidewalks, houses are far apart, lots of trees and winding roads. It was late winter, so it was still light out but fading fast. I was driving the speed limit, and I'm always a very attentive driver, and I don't fiddle with things while I drive. That's 100% the reason why this didn't turn out differently. I was going 35 miles per hour, so a decent clip for the area, but slightly under the speed limit, when suddenly there was a young man in front of my car. He was tall, slim, wearing black from head to toe. He was walking from a side road and, without looking in either direction and without hesitation, walked straight across a busy road, the one I was on. It was almost like he waited until someone came along so he could play chicken with his body and a car. Luckily, my car and I both noticed something in the road that wasn't expected. I immediately stopped, praying the person behind me wasn't farting around on their phone and didn't slam into me. Our eyes met and he smirked. That little shit almost ruined several lives with his stupid trick. He continued past my car and right in front of another car coming in the other direction. It must have been his lucky day, because they barely missed him, swerving into a ditch. He just kept walking, disappearing into a grove of trees on the other side of the road. I was driving down an old country road at night when my headlights caught a glimpse of something. I slowed down and saw what appeared to be a decrepit-looking person hunched over with a slow, ominous gait. They were just trudging along the side of the road in the middle of the night like an aimless zombie. I pulled up beside them and hollered out. To my horror, I saw what appeared to be a middle-aged woman with stringy, greasy hair, wearing some kind of gown. Not only was she barefoot, but her gown seemed to have bloodstains all over it. I hollered out again, but she just kept walking. "Ma'am," I said, "are you all right? What are you doing?" She stopped dead in her tracks and slowly turned her head towards me. She gave me this awful, scary-looking grin. Her teeth were disgusting. I immediately got a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew something wasn't right. Long story short, I called the police and followed alongside her in my vehicle. She didn't seem to mind me there at all. She just kept walking. Eventually, help arrived, and it came to light that she was a resident at a nearby care facility. She had early onset dementia and apparently found her way out when no one was looking. Her period coincided with this event, and she had smeared the blood all over herself. This was years and years ago, but it's still fresh in my mind as a truly terrifying experience. I still have nightmares of seeing her limping along the dark highway, grinning maliciously. I was driving on the interstate when I came across a pickup going about 15 miles per hour below the speed limit. No big deal. I pass, and a good mile up I merge right. I keep my speed at about 7 miles per hour over the limit for long drives, so I wasn't going too fast. That pickup suddenly roars up next to me, with some redneck-looking people screaming and holding guns up at their pickup's roof. Then passes me, swerves in front of me, and slams on their brakes. Fortunately, I scared shitless, so I had started slowing down, and was ready to just move back into the passing lane and gun it. I thought that was it. but that same truck tailed me for about an hour, 400 to 500 feet back. I was freaking out, and that was the only time I've ever been happy to see a speed trap. Pulled up next to the police car and explained the situation while the truck passed. Weirdly enough, the cop recognized me as he'd questioned me pertaining to a wrong place at the wrong time thing a few months prior related to a gun heist, so he offered to follow me out of town and make sure the pickup wasn't trailing me. Spun out while delivering pizza. I was making a turn at a four-way stop between a 4-lane road and a 2-lane street with an incline. It was raining a bit. One moment I was at the stop sign. The next I remember, I was about 30 feet away from where I was, facing the wrong direction for the lane I was in, looking at the intersection. Did like a 270-degree turn. I pulled over onto the other side of the road, across from where I was, regained my composure, and then kept driving. I was fine, and so was my car. No other vehicles were involved. This happened about a year ago. This is the first time I brought it up. Another time I wasn't driving a car, but I was wrangling silver buffalo. I was pushing a line of carts to the store when someone backed out of their spot and into the carts. Carts were everywhere. The car's bumper was trashed, and I, physically, was fine. The driver realized he hit something and yelled, "You okay?" while staying in their car. I said I'm fine. They drove away. This happened a few years ago when I was driving. I was driving my first-gen Prius in the HOV lane, 80 miles an hour, and 5 lanes from the shoulder, with my family in the car, from Los Angeles to the Inland Empire, when suddenly the hybrid battery failed and the car sputtered and died. Unfortunately, it was right in the middle of rush hour, and I suddenly had to maneuver this deadly, unresponsive car safely off the road. Luckily, my significant other and co-pilot had the window open and was paying attention. They had just woken up from a nap. We were able to clear the lanes quickly with hand signaling to get over to the shoulder as the car quickly started losing momentum. After the car had time to rest, we were able to get it back on and safely back to our house. I've never had a car lose control like that before, right on the highway at such high speeds and not crashed. The only thing scarier than that was when my significant other was driving and made the poorly thought out decision to drive through an active shooter situation with the police and an armed man. It was pretty clear what was going on, but we just kept driving and somehow everything was okay. The IE is crazy, LOL. Almost got turbo-wrecked by a 60,000-pound articulated truck, nearly tipping over because of mud. I started tipping, then more, then supreme sense of dread as I kept tipping more and was straight traumatized from it. I was so lucky the back end didn't tip, and it was just the front end curving up and under somehow. If the back end tipped over, that's 60,000 pounds of weight converted into jerking my body with whiplash as I was strapped in. Probably would have snapped my back easy. Another time, same year, some dumpster-brained bitch waited until I was 2 feet from the start of a T intersection to pull out in front of me without looking on her phone. I was going 45 and I would have hit her driver's side. She blocked both lanes of traffic that I would have drove into, then stopped. I had to drive into oncoming traffic to avoid murdering her. Then she drove off like nothing happened and didn't even stop. And I was too far into the other direction to turn around and get her plates or anything. Lucky for me, I'm an incredible driver and was able to safely avoid any damage. My brother told me a freaky story. He was a passenger in his friend's car. They were driving way too fast because his friend was probably on drugs or drunk. Somehow, they were in the pathway of a sign going like 50 miles an hour, and he said the car lost all power and all momentum and stopped dead in its tracks, or he would have crashed really bad. Not sure how it happened. He was completely convinced it was God or something. He would say to me, "How would a car going 50 stop on a dime without sliding or anything?" IDK.